Hello, Holliston. I'm John Cronin. Welcome to another episode of Just Thinking. As you may know by now, it's the season of elections and town meetings and all things local government. One of the biggest issues that we're facing, obviously, is a new high school. This evening, we're going to talk to a panel of folks that have come together to help you and me understand a little bit about what the next steps ahead on this project that is starting to take shape here in Holliston. I'd like to introduce the panel tonight, so I'll move left to right and ask you to introduce yourselves and let people know a little bit about what space you represent.
First, John, it's lovely to see you in this role. Thank you for inviting us in to be interviewed here. My name's Tina Hein, and I am on the Town of Holliston Select Board. I'm in my first year of my third term, and so have some knowledge from the previous terms on this project, but here as a member of the working group with Frank and Hilary.
Great. Awesome. Frank Ogura, Holliston School Committee. I'm in my second year of my first term. And really great collaborative group with this working group for the Holliston High School.
Thanks, Frank.
Hilary Bresnahan.
Hi, Hilary. Way down there.
I am also in my second year of my first term.
Great. Thanks for joining us, everybody. A feasibility study is on the agenda for the upcoming town meeting, May 11th. It's article number 25, so a little later in the evening. We've already had some preliminary discussions with stakeholders, including the town manager. We reviewed the warrant with him, touched on this item. We've had various school committee candidates running for the particular spaces this year talk about it. But this evening, I just wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive to let people know the feasibility study is but the first step in many that are ahead. So I wanted to first touch on why do we need a feasibility study. What's before us is the request to fund $2.5 million of this particular service. We'll start with you, Tina, and if you could give us some breadth from your perspective on what a feasibility study means, why people should consider voting for it, and if they're not inclined to vote for it, what does that mean? So give the pro and con, if you could.
Sure. So a feasibility study is something that town meeting's been presented with in the recent past. As an example, we asked town meeting to fund a feasibility study for a new DPW project. It is how you scope out the project. It gives you insight into future needs. It allows you to address what you hope the project will accomplish, and it allows you to really do a deep dive so that when you return for a funding request of town meeting, that includes construction and additional design at a much more detailed level, you have the information to back up the request. So at $2.5 million, it is more than what we've seen for recent feasibility projects. However, it's a much more complex project. So it's a bigger building. It obviously serves the education of our high school students. So it's got many, many complicated aspects to it, which I will defer to my friends here on the school committee to get into if they choose to. But the $2.5 million will cover a span, I believe it's about 18 months of that deep dive into, again, the scope of the project and the many pieces that we'll have to consider in any potential building. The other thing that I would say about a feasibility study, it is the gate into a program that the state offers. It's a door, an opening into the state program, the Massachusetts School Building Authority new building program that gives the town of Holliston matching state dollars. So the cost of this project is actually significantly less, and again, I'll let these folks to my left speak to that, but it's significantly less when we get into that program. And their requirement, the Massachusetts School Building Authority requirement, is that you take this first step. Not only is it an indication that the community supports a high school, it gives the level of detail so the MSBA program knows what they're getting into, where those state dollars are going to be.
So as you described, it's a gate or a door that must be passed through. In the event that it doesn't pass,
sure,
the door closes effectively.
If it doesn't pass in May, we'll most likely be back in October to ask again.
Okay.
If it doesn't pass in May, I find that highly unlikely. I think the community, we can talk about that in a little bit too, but I think the community wholeheartedly supports this. So if it were not to pass, and that unlikely scenario, we would come back in October, I would anticipate, but we will have done even more education to the public in between, because I would see it as an engagement issue.
Is a feasibility study an educational vision, Frank?
It's inclusive of an educational vision. A lot of it is going to be based on what are the needs of the students, what are the needs of the community. High school serves foremost as an educational building, but it also, we're looking at how it could better serve the community. are there community aspects we can start inclusive of to give a broader scope for the school to be more usable for other events?
Do you have any examples of what that might include?
We've talked about this a few times, Tina, like the idea around potentially a swimming pool, right? To have swimming events there and be able to lease that out to the community. Nowhere, no how, say this on camera, we're signed up for a swimming pool. But there are examples like that where we may open more for community events that we can't offer today in our high school.
Before we get to you, Hilary, this has come up a little bit in prior conversations, and I'm of a certain age where I remember the last round 30 years ago-ish. One of the things that I would understand is that there are certain expenses that are eligible for reimbursement under the program, Frank. A long time ago, I was told pools are an easy no. So in the event that the community does come forward and say resoundingly we would like a pool, or we'd like a pickleball court, or we'd like a polo ground, whatever the community says, they have to be willing to pay up to 100% of that cost.
Yes.
So let's be real that, it's nice to wish and hope, but if you're in this for the value that the program can present, I think you should let people know there are things that are within the program's reimbursement scope and then things that are without. So just so they understand going forward, making choices does have an impact on the overall value of the project.
I think the feasibility study allows us to get into that level of detail, and to Frank's point, it allows us to understand, not us, the three of us at this table, but the community, the school committee, the select board, and the people on the school building committee. It allows us to understand what the community values and would look for. I love the example of the swimming pool because I have 4 children who are swimmers, and wouldn't have been nice to drive to the high school rather than Attleboro for the pool. However, I think you share that as an example.
Yes.
And the feasibility study lets us get into the community's needs as well as the educational. It's all inclusive, as Frank said.
So Hilary, as we look into other choices that the feasibility study will look at, the scope, if you will, is it solely the option of new construction that they're going to be looking at?
That's part of the process of the feasibility study. Really, the feasibility study it's a rigorous study to look at what all the options on the table. So the study will include hiring a project manager, hiring architect, hiring a civil engineer to really look at the current high school and help us understand what is possible with the current site, what are the needs with our building, what are the needs, based on the community input that we hear, and really kind of give us all the information we need to make an informed decision.
On Monday evening, upcoming, I understand the school committee will be making a presentation to town meeting. Is the message, in addition to discussing, obviously, the impact of Article 25, is the message leaning in on why a new high school is necessary?
I think it's really kind of trying to make sure we have all the information so that as a community we can make that decision. So as Tina shared, it's really exciting to be admitted into the MSBA, and this opens the door to up to 50% grant funding for a new high school. But the first step is that feasibility study to really understand, is that what we need, what are our needs, and what are the options moving forward. Really give us all the information.
Okay. Frank, a little bit about the time frame. Tina alluded to it, so folks should expect a couple of steps here. So Monday night, the vote comes in. Favorable, they will be allowed to spend up to $2.5 million on a contract. It'll take a while to get the contract, right?
Yes.
And one would expect, given the end of the school year, we're talking sometime, maybe June, summertime, I would think, when the new vendor is brought on. Is that reasonable, broadly?
It all really depends. So the eligibility period starts June 1st, actually. So we were accepted in December, which then set the timeline to get a lot of things in row to start on June 1st. So on June 1st is really when the process starts with MSBA, which then includes us going out to bid for a contract for this work. And that can take anywhere from a couple weeks to, as we've seen, a couple months. So I would say, without definitive answers, but throughout the summer we'll be working on, and the school building committee specifically, will be working on that contract.
That's where I was going. So that's the next big shoe to drop. Following, hopefully, a favorable vote for this article, you would then move to appoint a school building committee. Do you want to take a stab at a little bit about what that committee is going to look like, how they operate, who they report to, what are their powers? Because clearly, upon appointment, that committee will then embrace the opportunity to bring that vendor on that Frank just discussed and start working towards that 18-month-ish timeline. Fair enough?
Yeah, I
So
would
talk about this committee a little
Well,
bit.
first I'd say the committee is not being formed for those 18 months. This committee, it's worth stating here quite clearly that there's no term on the committee appointment.
So the project's done.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. It's not just for the feasibility period. And so we leaned heavily as a board, we leaned heavily on where we had institutional knowledge and professional experience to design the school building committee, and then we worked collaboratively with the school committee to meet them with what they were looking for out of the committee. What I want to say is that the MSBA program, the Massachusetts School Building Authority program, does not give you a firm and hard, this is what your school building committee should look like. We had a lot of choices to make. So just to go down the list of some key choices that the working group recommended back to our respective boards. One is that it was a select board. The charge for the committee would be formed by the select board, which really, in my mind, says that the committee reports back to the select board. One variation of that is that it could report to town meeting. It could be formed out of town meeting, and we decided that wasn't the most effective or efficient, the most transparent way for decisions to be made. So we made it the school building committee, a select board committee. So they'll report back to, that was one decision that we made. Membership was another, and then the number of members was yet another decision. These vary tremendously across communities. And so we set it as 13 members. 7 are voting and 6 are non-voting. And of the 6 that are non-voting, they are all positions that are recommended by the MSBA, although not dictated, and they're staff positions. Because what you want to have is that professional expertise on the committee to guide the 7, to give input and feedback to the 7 voting members. So what we're putting forward is a request for, or the charge rather, includes 13 members, 6 non-voting, 7 voting. Of the 7 voting, 1 will be a school committee member, 1 will be a select board member, that leaves 5. Of those 5, 2 will be appointed by the school committee, and 3 will be appointed by the select board. So now what you have is a school committee appointing 2, the select board appointing 11. If that math follows, I can go into more detail, but I think
11?
Correct. We will appoint the non-voting, and we will appoint the school committee member,
I see. Yep.
and we will appoint the remaining.
That's great. This group, when it meets, is it a public body? Will it be holding publicly posted meetings and fully transparent and so forth?
It will follow open meeting law, correct.
These school building committees, I would note, are part of the agreement with the state. This is a format that is not unique to what you're about to do. It's part of the template. It's tried and true, effectively, and I believe we did have one some years ago. Talk a little bit about the school building committee, Frank, where the feasibility study is approved. You'll be moving to appoint these individuals that Tina just talked about. If you're interested in that kind of thing, how do you get involved?
So in collaboration with the select board, Tina, and then Hilary as part of the working group, we aligned on there's a single volunteer form, a single process to apply. Because what we said from the beginning was there should not be multiple ways to apply, which will create a ton of confusion, even though there are members from the school committee that will be appointed as well as the select board. So we're going through a single volunteer form and a letter of interest. And then we as a working group are going to review those in conjunction with Cheryl as our chief HR. And then present those to our respective committees, those recommendations, to then effectively vote on to be appointed. The way we looked at it too was basically we want a balance of the community, but the charge and the MOU, which is important to mention, we're creating an MOU between the school committee, the select board, and the school building committee to understand how we operate. What are the rules of the road? Because there's definitely, if you mentioned school building committee, charged with reporting to the select board, that creates a ton of confusion. So we want to demystify that with an MOU that says this is what the school building committee is responsible for. This is how to engage with the community. We do not want the school building committee to be in a silo. They will be engaging with every organization in this community to get that feedback we were talking around, what the ideal school looks like, and making sure the input is considered when making decisions around the school building. Because this committee will be tasked with putting that plan in place. So in the feasibility study, making those decisions and recommending forth, as well as after the fact. So once the shovels hit the ground, what all that means in that process, all the way to doors opening.
So Tina's given us a perspective following a successful feasibility warrant article passing, we then move as a community to create a school building committee. Frank, you breathe life into what that looks like operationally, interacting between boards and committees to ensure it touches all facets of its mission. This is an appointed board that would act in perpetuity until the structure is built and the project is completed. I'd like to talk a little bit about the scope. They're going to have a lot of work to do. These people with other things to do, so it's a busy job. Hilary, do you have the idea of the types of things that the school building committee will be doing during the life of their existence?
Yeah, one of the nice things about the MSBA is that there is a specific process that they kind of provide and helps the school building committee follow. There's also a liaison that kind of helps guide the work.
From the state back to the local? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But some of the things that they'll be doing are, hiring the project manager and the architect, looking at kind of a range of options. They might be visiting other schools to kind of get a sense of the process that they followed, get more information from them, and then also looking for ways to engage the community. So get community input in different ways, and then also kind of communicate some of their findings back out to the community.
They don't have a staff. They don't physically have a space or a resource to find themselves. As far as I know, they don't have their own budget. But when the time comes, somebody's going to have to put together a substantial scope of work and ultimately a bidding process that I would hope is following state law. And then following that, when you start to incur expenses, bills have to be reviewed, bills have to be paid. I presume the infrastructure of the town will be sort of integrated into that. There is no expectation of adding new people just for this.
Correct.
Okay.
So among those non-voting members, John, all 6 are staff. So not only will we have the superintendent and the principal of the high school, we will have James Keast or whomever is in the facilities manager role, so the staff position that will cover the procurement piece that you're talking about, the review of bills, the signing of contracts, the procuring of bids and so on. We will have our facilities manager, who is the town's procurement officer, in that role, and we will have the town manager as well, one of the 6 members. So the oversight from the financial team side of things on the town side, from the educational expertise side of things on the school side, the professionals who we lean on heavily to do this work, they're already in the committee.
Right. For the sake of sort of expressing it and cover all the specific points, I'll read a little bit about what the SBC, or the building committee, school building committee, will be scoped with from 1,000 feet. They will oversee the feasibility and design. They will work with architects, the state, as you pointed out, Hilary, and the consultants. They'll review options and recommendations. I presume that includes build versus renovation, site selection, and other factors that come into building a vertical structure. They will ensure transparency and accountability. That goes back to the question about public meetings, making sure that the public always knows what's going on, they're welcomed into the process, and they can participate. They'll balance educational goals with taxpayer responsibility. That goes to the question I asked earlier. It's nice to want this, but sometimes you have to settle for this. And then finally, represent the community throughout the process. And I think that goes to what you were saying, Tina, that you're looking for diverse voices, people with different backgrounds, and that includes both town officials, electeds, to work together collaboratively. That's the design. But when it comes to the skill set, this is a multi-million-dollar project. It's going to take a while to get done. There's an investment of time, intellectual capital. Diversity of thought and education and experience is critical. And I think you all are around the idea that you would prefer people with a finance or accounting background. Construction project management would be critical as well. Engineering and architecture, it's always good to have somebody familiar with the state building code and understanding of wants and needs and what can we do here. Parents and community members, you probably won't lack for any kind of interest in that regard, but you do want various community members and parents involved. Somebody who's involved with communications and public engagement. As electeds, you all know how important it is to push your message and make sure, I think you said earlier, that it's not co-opted. It's always one simple, clear message. This is where you go for info. You'll probably need somebody who can do that effectively and regularly. Sustainability and energy expertise. We were speaking with a couple of the school committee candidates the other night, and they were talking about some of the initiatives that the schools are pushing for. Once the roofs are down, they're looking for green energy on the top. It's part of the code now. I think there's an expectation we build things that can generate, for the most part, some of their own energy, and so that's going to be a big part of a multi-million-dollar project. So there's clearly a lot of expertise that would be desired. I hope you find it. But when you get down to it, you're going to be committee members, select board members at the same time. You're going to want to have some role in this too. If you're not on the committee, you're going to hear from them. Is that fair to say?
Hear from the school building committee? Absolutely.
So on regularity, you're going to, over the course of the next several years, you're going to tap in with them. I would expect town meeting would as well. Can we talk a little bit about the end game? Roughly how long will this take, Frank, until the doors open in the new high school? If I gave you a wand right now.
Oh, if you gave me a wand, it could be in 3 years. But no, it's typically between 5 and 7 is what we're looking at.
From which date?
From June 1st.
Okay, so it's a ways out. What are you looking at for the potential, like, round number cost? I know it's tens of millions, if not hundreds.
It's hard to say. I mean, so first, the feasibility study is really just to help us get information to make that decision. Are we going to move forward? It doesn't commit us to a new high school. But should the building committee make that recommendation and we move forward with that, yes, it's going to be an expensive build. That's why we're part of this MSBA process, is that we will have the option of up to 50% grant funding. But definitely we're looking to come in under Lexington's.
Now, go ahead, please.
I'm a little more, maybe through my role on the select board, a little closer to numbers. We were going through this with the DPW project.
Yes.
So I think that my peers to my left here may disagree with me sharing this information, but I think that people can appreciate, those listening can understand that we are at the beginning. We don't know. There's still a lot to learn. But I think when you look at other new buildings that have been built through the MSBA program around the state and our region, you're talking about 1,000 a square foot,
right,
plus or minus, and that checks out with what we understand from the DPW project, plus or minus. That's always the devil's in the detail there. And I think the current facility here is 30,000 square feet. So if folks are looking to just
300. The high school? It's more than 30,000 square feet. Oh, it's hundreds of thousands of square feet.
Yeah, it's larger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't have the exact figure.
It's going to be quite expensive. I guess I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm quite certain it's in that space. Most of them are. But I can, to your point on the DPW, the only thing we can guarantee is the cost of construction goes up.
Yes.
And if you're talking the timeline you are, Frank, it's going to be, it'll be a number we can't envision right now, but it will be high. It will be offset by state reimbursement process, and there'll be more to learn later on, but if it follows what we went through 26 years ago, the town puts up the full amount, right?
Yeah.
That's the full amount of the project. It's $10, and then over a period of 20 years,
Right,
the state will start paying you back, so that by the end, the state is paying most of the cost back. But there's a charge for this, and it's going to hit the tax bills. So people will be tuning in the next several years after the feasibility is done to kind of figure out, okay, it's nice to have these things, but there's a cost going back to that. What does it mean for me? And it's too early to suggest, but I think we should alert people. It's going to be a big number. You know, it's not a DPW building. It's something with a zero on the end of that, frankly.
Sure. It's interesting because in working through the working group, you feel a weight on your shoulders to get it right. You feel the responsibility to create a committee that is going to be able to address the very things that you are raising as reasonable thoughts that any taxpayer would have, that any resident would have. I absolutely feel that those are good questions to be asking, although we don't have good answers today. They're not wrong to be thinking about. And you want a school building committee, and so this is where the weight's on our shoulders. You want a school building committee that has that diversity of thought, so that when they speak to say, this is what's best for our community, that the community sees reflected back to them voices that are inclusive of. So one example is we have an at-large member who is 65 or over. That's a criteria in order to be considered for one of those 5 at-large positions, because you want somebody on the committee that is thinking about the parent who does not currently have children in the school system. How are they viewing this project? I think that's very important. So that's sort of the weight I've felt in creating the school building committee is really we're just gatekeepers on a process here.
Right.
And if we do it well, we're creating something that future taxpayers are going to be able to rely on in a way for good information that they can see as something to hopefully accept. And I think they will.
Let me put our school committee, I guess, on the spot. You have the benefit because you get the question after you. What do you want out of a new high school?
I want to make sure we revisit the whole student and part of what we talk about in terms of our vision of the whole student, understanding what they need. Education first and foremost, but what else do they need? How can we build that whole student in the form of a physical building? How can we provide that for them? It's going to be a difficult task because students change, the environment changes, so we also have to future-proof it and understand where are we going. So folks that may not see where we're at today or how students need to operate, where do they need to operate in the future? Look at AI. I mean, 2 years ago, no one even knew, like AI was Terminator. Now we're talking about AI using it in our real life. And that's something that's going to change how our students learn. How does that transform into the use of a facility and make that facility as useful for those students, not just 7 years from now when the doors open, but 20 years from then, for as long as possible.
Does it include 8th grade students?
It potentially. So it may. Everything's on the table as we work through this.
Fair enough. Hilary, what are you looking for in a new high school?
So I agree with Frank. Like I'm looking for something that is going to serve our current students and our future students. Really thinking about a building that offers that flexibility of programming to meet current needs and needs that we can't quite project in the future. But I'm also thinking about it as a community space. So right now we use a high school for town meetings, for school committee meetings. If I drive by in the weekends, I see youth sports going on. In the summers, we have summer camp here. So really thinking about like the needs of the community and how we can build that into the development of the high school building.
Right. One of the things I wanted to bring in, and I'll start with you, Tina, but I'm sure Frank and Hilary can weigh in, is an article that will come up before this. It's Article 16, and it would petition the General Court to pass a special law enabling Holliston to provide a means-tested senior property tax exemption for debt exclusion funded construction projects. I'll start with you. What does this mean?
So this is an article that is definitely worthy of thought. I'm glad you pulled it out and paused on it. It does relate to the project of a new high school, because if to the extent that we go for debt exclusion, this article sets it up for those seniors who have income levels that allow them to qualify for certain benefits, exempting them from taxes. This article fine-tunes that further to say that exemption goes to debt exclusions. So
Capital debt exclusion.
correct. So seniors that already qualify because of their income level for certain exemptions would, through that article, also be able to exempt out of paying the increase on property taxes driven by a debt exclusion for a capital project. The numbers will be small, John. We are not talking about hundreds. We're talking about tens of seniors. We are talking about the most vulnerable seniors in our community. I feel it's a very responsible way. This was sponsored by, I think it's sponsored by the Select Board, but it was brought forward by the Board of Assessors. And I see it's a leadership kind of article in that this is something that the principal assessor was looking to say, how can we help the most vulnerable seniors in the town of Holliston? It is not specific, John, to the high school.
Right.
Okay. It's really, this is an option for any debt exclusion. It so happens we're looking at one for high school. I see it as a really considerate type of change that we're
Why wouldn't
enacting.
somebody vote for that?
Tough question, John. I think it's sometimes the fear of, if it's many, then how does it impact me? I'm highly supportive of this article. I think it's important to think about those that are most vulnerable And also, how do we think about the future of our community without always coming back to, I can't afford that, right? So how do we get the community engagement while protecting those most vulnerable? And to Tina's point, I think we saw with the latest article that passed in terms of the operating budget reductions based on income, it's not going to be a massive amount. So for those that have to then share the burden of those that are excluded, it's not going to be material, super material at least.
Are you familiar with this topic?
I am not as familiar with it. No.
Sure. So this would require if it's approved, the state representative to bring to the legislature a request to pass the special act. So it's not a foregone conclusion that upon a successful vote it happens. But I asked Frank, why wouldn't it? I mean, it seems innocuous enough. But one of the catches is, if, to Tina's point, there are some number of community citizens that are now become eligible for this, the cost of the project didn't change, but the distribution method of the cost did. So it means that if you are in the program, you're not going to be paying, but if you're outside the program, you're going to likely pay more. Is that meaningful?
Absolutely, and I think this is kind of enhances the point of the feasibility study. So the feasibility study, again, is it's not agreeing to a new high school, but learning more. So as part of that, it's that cost analysis. How is this going to impact our community financially? What is that going to do to taxes? But then also, what are the enhancements that the new high school building, if moved forward, would bring to the community?
Got it. You know, it's obviously early in a process, as Frank indicated, will be years in the making. If we're all here, then we'll have lots of stories to talk about. There's a lot to learn, not just about what's in front of us, but maybe from systems that have gone through this. Do you intend to, on behalf of the school committee, reach out to some communities that are actively going through a process right now? Is that part of your to-do list?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any communities right now that are on your radar?
Yes, actually, some of our district administrators have already reached out to Worcester and some other communities. We have also, the three of us, taken a look at some of the school building committee kind of websites for different towns and kind of read through their agendas minutes to see what their process was like. And our new superintendent is actually in a district that is also going through this process. So he brings a little bit of experience when he starts in July.
Is he building? Is he in the building phase?
He's
or?
in the early phase like we are.
Oh,
yes.
he's in phase up phase. I
Yeah.
see it. Okay, great. Folks, we're going to wrap up, but before we do, I first want to send my sincere thanks to all three of you. You all strike me as very earnest and committed public servants to make sure that this process goes as well as we can engineer it, and that's great. But before we close, Tina and Frank and Hilary, just a brief pitch on what's next. Okay, Monday night's coming up. We talked about the school building committee. I'd like you to make your pitch on what your hopes are and where you want your volunteers to come from. So we'll start with you, Tina.
Sure. 100% get your applications in. I'm not sure which camera to look at, John, but I'm trying to be really direct, so I'm just going to look
They all
right at
see
the
you,
camera.
Tina.
Right.
There are ones behind you too.
Get your volunteer form in if you have any interest at all. We have 7 already, which is a fantastic number, but there's plenty of room here for more people to apply. Okay. So absolutely take the jump and submit your interest if you would like to be considered for the school building committee.
And when would the decisions be made on the appointment?
We're looking at, I'm going to throw out a date and you can confirm. I think we said it was May 25th, 23rd or 25th, whatever that Friday is. We're flexible on that as a working group. It's not a hard and firm. We obviously want a good response.
Are you all going through the applications?
We will.
Or is that
We
to
will
some?
be.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
we will
part
be.
of
May
what you're.
20th. So the process will start May 23rd. We're looking by end of June to have the appointments be confirmed by each of the committees.
Got it.
So again, that can stretch if we don't find someone or if the committees are having debate, as it should. But our goal is with June 1st starting, we put the initiation phase with the MSBA that the school building committee process has started. We're working to a point. So really in June is to get that loaded.
John, I have one more thing.
Please,
though.
go right ahead.
I actually have
Yeah.
2 more things. Please come to town meeting. The vote to approve the feasibility, the vote of yes needs 2/3 of town meeting voters. So I really want to appeal to folks. If you're sitting at home listening to this and wondering whether or not you should, whether or not there'll be enough support, you got to show up. You got to come to town meeting and vote because we need your vote in order for the feasibility study study to pass. I think it will. I'm not concerned, but let's have a strong showing. The last thing you asked, what would I like out of this? I would like to have a school building committee that has representation from people who, number one, have a vision for the future, number two, understand that this is something that becomes the community in every way, shape, or form. It's not about what you as a committee member get out of it for your own benefit, your own family, your own children, or your own experiences as a parent if your children were previous. This is about building something that is going to become a legacy. This is a legacy vote in terms of the votes they make as a committee, and this will be a legacy project. So my goal, my dream would be to have people on the committee who understand that and are in it for, we use this a lot, but the greater good, but knowing that this is going to serve decades worth of Holliston students, and that's why they're committed to the school building.
View ahead, Frank.
Oh, Tina, I share a lot of the same. Definitely appeal to everyone to come to town meeting, support the feasibility study, Article 25. And in the school building committee, what we're really looking for, in addition to what Tina mentioned in terms of community involvement, is putting your legacy on as well, but also how do you put the lens that you bring? So we're looking for very specific candidates that are 65 and over, that have legal and financial background. From the school committee side, parent and education background, to really have multiple lenses, but understand too, the entire committee, as 13 members with 7 that are only voting, you need to outreach and hear your neighbors and reach out to your neighbors and get that feedback and bring it back. And my hope for this as well is to think about building a legacy. It is not about a vote. The vote you make today will have a likely 50-year impact, hopefully, if we do this right, if it's a new building. But this is really the entryway too. Anyone fearful of a new high school, what that means for you, we need to start here and then define the next steps. And there's going to be a number of steps in the way that we have to pass through to get to that final state.
And votes, right, Hilary?
Yes.
What else is on
Absolutely.
your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I really encourage people to come out on Monday for the town meeting on the warrant. It is a feasibility study, so that's really just engaging in a rigorous process to get as much information as we can for the community to make that informed decision about whether we do move forward with a high school build. And again, just that we really want those diverse experiences and representatives on that school building committee. So please, not just parents, but a representative 65 plus community, different experiences in terms of building, finance, or education, just really a range of diverse perspectives.
Thank you so much. Again, wish to thank you each for coming in tonight. I'm sure there'll be a lot more talk about this. In closing, Holliston, you've heard it. The feasibility study is before you Monday night, May 11th, Article 25, as Frank pointed out. The discussion will hopefully include a little bit more detail about some of the timelines and challenges that this feasibility study and the upcoming plans will include. But also, bear in mind, the feasibility study is looking for your volunteerism. Please go to the town's website. The website will also be shown on this particular broadcast for you to follow to find the application. And of course, if you have any questions, call Town Hall. They'll find the path for you. I'm John Cronin. Thank you again for joining me for an episode of Just Thinking. Good night.